When my son delivered the news that shattered my world, I maintained my composure, walked calmly to my vehicle, and placed a single phone call. Before January arrived, their mortgage support had vanished. This was merely the opening move in my campaign for justice. Dignity demanded restoration, and pride required correction. What followed will astound you. I could prepare my signature turkey this Christmas, I offered, sinking deeper into Michael's leather sofa. The one with herb stuffing that reminded your mother of her grandmother's recipe. She always claimed it surpassed even family traditions. My words lingered in the heated air, mingling with Isabella's costly vanilla candles. Michael shifted uncomfortably, his wedding band reflecting light from their towering Christmas tree. His posture transformed, shoulders drawing inward defensively. Father, regrettably, your presence won't be appropriate for our Christmas celebration. The statement struck like a physical assault. I stared, convinced I'd misunderstood. What are you implying? Why wouldn't my presence be appropriate? Michael avoided eye contact, focusing intently on the marble coffee table, the same one I'd helped select when Isabella deemed their previous furniture inadequate for her standards. Isabella's parents are visiting, and they would prefer your absence. It simplifies matters. You understand their perspective on traditions. They maintain particular customs. Each word diminished him further, as if he were shrinking inside himself. I surveyed the living room, noting the silk drapes I'd financed when Isabella complained about privacy concerns. The hardwood flooring funded by my second mortgage. The crown molding that maxed out my credit cards. Every surface bore evidence of my sacrifice, my devotion to my son. Their particular customs, I repeated slowly. And what customs might those be, Michael? He flinched. Please don't complicate this situation further. Through the kitchen entrance, Isabella's professional-grade mixer commanded attention. The $2,000 appliance she'd insisted was essential for her brief holiday baking phase, probably used twice since October. Where am I expected to spend Christmas then? The question emerged quieter than intended. Michael's expression crumbled. Perhaps Aunt Rosa's house, or we could arrange something the following weekend. The following weekend. As if Christmas were a routine appointment, reschedulable for convenience. I rose, my knees protesting after 8 years of carrying this burden alone. I understand. Father, wait. But I was already moving toward the exit, past family photographs where my image grew increasingly distant in each frame, past the closet housing Isabella's extensive wardrobe collection. My hand found the doorknob, solid and cold. Son, I said without turning, convey my regards to Isabella's parents. Tell them, Feliz Navidad. December air struck my face like punishment as I approached my truck. Behind me, Michael called my name once before the door closed with finality. I remained in my driver's seat momentarily, engine silent, observing Christmas lights twinkling in windows of homes where I'd never belong. My phone vibrated, likely Michael attempting damage control with empty promises and guilt. I didn't respond. Instead, I started the engine and drove into darkness, abandoning the warm glow of the house my money had purchased but where I'd never truly belong. The heater hummed against December's chill as I navigated familiar streets toward home. South Hills stretched around me, every corner holding memories of who I used to be. A man who believed family meant everything, who'd sacrifice his last dollar for his son's happiness. That man was a fool. At the red light on 29th and Grand, I watched a young father loading Christmas presents into his SUV while his children pressed excited faces against fogged windows. Once, that had been Michael and me, before Isabella, before I became merely a walking ATM with inconvenient emotions. Numbers cascaded through my mind like a broken slot machine. $2,800 monthly for 5 years. My calculator had surrendered trying to compute the total last spring when I'd finally tallied everything. $140,000. More than Maria and I had saved for retirement. Gone. I pressed the accelerator harder than necessary as the light changed green. The truck responded with a growl matching my mood. 5th Street, where I'd refinanced our home to cover their down payment. The loan officer had regarded me with pity I hadn't recognized then. "Mr. Flores, are you certain about this decision? You're risking considerable assets for someone else's investment." Someone else's investment. Not my son's future or family security. Someone else's investment. Lincoln Street housed the bank where I'd secured a second mortgage when Michael lost employment 2 years prior. Temporary assistance. Dad. Just until I regained stability. Isabella had stood behind him, her $700 purse displayed prominently, nodding sympathetically while calculating my desperation's worth. As it transpired, my desperation proved worthless to them. I entered my driveway, concrete cracked because every available dollar had disappeared into their suburban fantasy. The porch light flickered, another deferred repair. Inside, the house felt hollow without Maria's laughter, without family gatherings that would never return. My phone rang as I struggled with keys, the sound echoing off empty walls. Isabella's name illuminated the screen, probably wanting to explain why I wasn't suitable for her parents' refined sensibilities. Perfect timing. I'd waited 5 years for this conversation. I answered after 4 rings, letting her wonder if I'd respond at all. "Dennis." Isabella's voice dripped artificial sweetness, the tone she employed when requesting utility bill assistance or property tax coverage. "I heard about the misunderstanding with Michael." Misunderstanding. I leaned against my kitchen counter, still wearing my coat. "I detect no misunderstanding, Isabella. Your position seems quite clear. You must understand my parents' perspective. They're very traditional people expecting a particular atmosphere during holidays." "A particular atmosphere," I repeated. "Specify what atmosphere." I heard shopping bags rustling in the background, probably spending money that should have covered their mortgage payment, money that was apparently my responsibility. "Well, they're unaccustomed to your style of cooking, all that spicy Mexican food and loud music. And frankly, Dennis, they're educated individuals expecting conversations about current events, literature, art. You understand." The words inflicted more damage than physical violence. 8 years of restraint, of swallowing insults for Michael's sake, of pretending not to notice how she regarded me like hired help. "My style of cooking," my voice remained level. "You mean the food you consumed every Sunday for 3 years during financial difficulties? The tamales you claimed reminded you of your grandmother. That was different. We were grateful then, but now with my parents visiting. Now with your parents, you cannot have the Mexican peasant embarrassing you at your refined dinner table." The artificial sweetness evaporated. "Don't be dramatic, Dennis. This isn't about race, it's about class. My father graduated summa cum laude from Washington State. My mother speaks 4 languages. They summer in the Hamptons. What exactly would you contribute to dinner conversation? Stories about laying tile." Heat flooded my chest, but my voice remained steady. "I constructed a business from nothing after your husband's grandfather died. I've employed over 50 people. I've paid more taxes than your father earned in his best year. Money isn't everything, Dennis. Breeding matters. Education matters. And frankly, Maria understood her place better than you understand yours." Silence stretched between us. She'd crossed an invisible line, stomping across it in her designer heels. "What did you say about my wife?" "I'm merely saying she knew how to blend in better. She didn't create waves. She understood that some spaces weren't meant for her." My grip tightened around the phone until my knuckles whitened. Maria possessed more class in her little finger than your entire bloodline will ever possess. Oh, please. She was a house cleaner who got lucky. At least she had the good sense to stay quiet about it. Isabella, my voice dropped to something I didn't recognize. Listen very carefully. This conversation is over. We're done pretending to be family. You can't just... We're done, I repeated, ending the call. I set the phone down carefully, my hands surprisingly steady. The kitchen felt different, smaller but somehow cleaner, as if a weight had lifted from the air itself. I walked to my corner desk and retrieved the manila folder I'd been avoiding for months. Bank statements, mortgage papers, 5 years of automatic transfers that had bled me dry while they lived like royalty. Time to stop the hemorrhaging. Documents spread across my kitchen table like crime scene evidence. 5 years of bank statements, each showing identical automatic transfers. $2,800 on the 15th of every month, vanishing from my account into theirs, a paper trail of my own stupidity. I retrieved my calculator and began computing. First year, $33,600. Second year, another $33,600. By the third year, I'd stopped purchasing new clothing. Fourth year marked the beginning of discount grocery shopping. This year, I'd been surviving on peanut butter sandwiches for lunch to manage expenses. $143,400. Excluding the down payment, excluding times I'd covered their utilities when Isabella's shopping addiction spiraled out of control. Excluding the new roof, landscaping, furniture deemed essential for their lifestyle. I leaned back, studying the numbers until they blurred. Maria's life insurance money, my retirement savings, the college fund we'd established for grandchildren I'd apparently never be permitted to see. All of it gone, poured into a house where I wasn't welcome for Christmas dinner. I reached for my phone and scrolled to my bank's number. The automated system offered options in English and Spanish. How thoughtful, how accommodating to people like me. Customer service. This is Jennifer. How may I assist you today? I need to cancel an automatic transfer, I said, my voice steadier than it had been in years. Certainly, sir. I'll need your account number and verification information. I provided the numbers, listening to her type professionally, efficiently, without judgment about why a 62-year-old man was canceling payments to what was presumably his son's mortgage. I see the transfer you're referencing, Mr. Flores. $2,800 monthly to Wells Fargo. Account ending in 7423. How long have you been making this transfer? 5 years. The words tasted bitter. And you want to cancel it effective immediately? I surveyed my kitchen, outdated appliances I couldn't afford to replace, walls needing paint, windows leaking cold air because I'd spent my home improvement budget on someone else's castle. Effective immediately, I confirmed. Done. The transfer has been canceled. Is there anything else I can help you with today? No, I said, surprised by how satisfying the word felt. No, that's everything. I disconnected and sat in the sudden quiet. Outside, December darkness was settling over Spokane, Christmas lights twinkling in windows where families gathered without conditions, without judgment, without needing to hide their identity. For the first time in 5 years, next month's budget would balance. For the first time since Maria died, I could afford to repair my porch light, purchase quality groceries, perhaps even take a vacation. I gathered the bank statements, mortgage papers, all evidence of my generosity. Then I walked to my fireplace, struck a match, and watched 5 years of martyrdom transform to ash. The fire felt warm against my face, warmer than I'd felt in years. My phone buzzed with a text message, probably Michael wanting to apologize, or Isabella needing money for something essential like new throw pillows. I didn't check it. Instead, I poured myself a glass of good whiskey, the bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion that never seemed to arrive. Tonight felt special enough. I raised my glass to the empty room, to Maria's photograph on the mantel, to the man I used to be and the man I was becoming. Merry Christmas to me, I said, and meant it. The next morning arrived crisp and clear, December sunlight streaming through my kitchen windows as I enjoyed my second cup of coffee. For the first time in years, I wasn't calculating how much money would disappear from my account in 3 days. Freedom tasted better than the Colombian blend I'd finally allowed myself to purchase. My phone rang at exactly 10:47 a.m. Isabella's name flashed like a warning signal. Dennis. Her voice carried that familiar tone of barely concealed impatience. I need you to collect my parents from Spokane Airport. Their flight from Portland arrives at 2 o'clock. I set down my mug carefully, watching steam curl toward the ceiling. Isabella, did you forget yesterday's conversation? Look, whatever that was about, we need to focus on practical matters now. My parents require transportation, and you're the only one available during the day. The audacity was breathtaking. Less than 24 hours after declaring me unworthy of sharing Christmas dinner with her family, she expected me to serve as their personal chauffeur. And you're asking me because... Because that's what family does, Dennis. They help each other. Her voice sharpened with irritation. Besides, let's be honest here. You're not my rival. You're too weak to be my rival. So just get in your truck and pick them up. There it was, the final insult wrapped in a command. What airline? I asked quietly. Alaska Air Flight 447. They'll be at baggage claim Carousel 3. I could hear her nails tapping against something hard, probably her granite countertop, the one I'd paid for when she decided laminate wasn't suitable for her dinner parties. And Dennis, they're expecting someone who can handle their luggage properly. Don't embarrass us. Of course, I said. I'll take care of everything. Good. And wear something decent. Maybe that blue shirt you wore to Michael's graduation. They notice things like that. The line went dead. She hadn't even said thank you. I sat back, looking at my phone's blank screen. 2 p.m., Flight 447, baggage claim, Carousel 3. I glanced at the wall clock, 10:52 a.m. Plenty of time. I poured myself another cup of coffee, added an extra spoonful of sugar, and opened yesterday's newspaper to the crossword puzzle I hadn't finished. 7 across. Delayed gratification. 12 letters. The answer would come to me eventually. At 2:15 p.m., I was settling into my favorite armchair with fresh Earl Grey and the Spokane Review's Sunday edition. Yesterday's crossword lay completed on my coffee table. Delayed gratification had been postponement. My phone buzzed against the wooden surface. Isabella's name again. I let it ring. December sun slanted through my living room windows, warming the space where I'd spent so many lonely evenings calculating the cost of my generosity. Today, the silence felt different. Earned, intentional. 2:47 p.m. The phone buzzed again. This time I could see the text preview. Dad, where are you? My parents are. I turned the phone face down and returned to the sports section. The Seahawks had lost again. Some things never changed. By 3:30 p.m., my phone had buzzed 6 times. I'd finished the newspaper, brewed a second pot of tea, and started organizing my kitchen table's junk drawer. Amazing what you could accomplish when you weren't rushing around serving people who considered you their personal bellhop. The 7th call came at 3:45 p.m. Instead of Isabella's name, I saw an unknown number. Probably her parents borrowing someone's phone at the airport. I let that one ring too. Outside, a neighbor was hanging Christmas lights on his porch, his children running around the yard with the manic energy only December afternoons could bring. Normal families doing normal things. No one was stranded anywhere, waiting for someone who would never come. 4:15 p.m. My phone started ringing continuously. Isabella, then the unknown number, then Isabella again. The buzzing became constant, like an angry wasp trapped against glass. I walked to my kitchen and unplugged my landline. Then I turned my cell phone completely off. Perfect silence. I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich and heated tomato soup. Comfort food I hadn't allowed myself in months because every grocery dollar had gone toward making ends meet while subsidizing their lifestyle. The cheese melted perfectly golden. The soup steamed in my favorite mug. Outside, The winter sun was already setting, casting long shadows across my backyard. Somewhere across town, 3 people were probably standing in an airport parking garage, arguing about taxi fare and wondering how their personal servant had the audacity to strand them. The thought made my soup taste even better. By 5 p.m., I'd eaten dinner, loaded my dishwasher, and was considering what movie to watch. It had been years since I'd had an entire evening to myself without worrying about emergency money calls or last-minute favors. I was reaching for the remote when someone started pounding on my front door. Not knocking, pounding. The kind of aggressive hammering that rattled the frame and announced pure fury. I set down my tea and walked slowly
Catherine
toward the
stepped
forward, her voice dripping with condescension perfected over decades of looking down on people like me. The pounding intensified as I approached the door. You clearly don't understand the magnitude of your mistake. Through the peephole, my husband has connections throughout the city, crowded on my small porch like wolves circling prey. I opened the door to find Cody Jenkins's red face inches from mine. This was a lesson for you. What the hell is wrong with you? He shouted, her gaze steadily, pushing past me into my living room about excessive irritation and poor treatment. We waited at that goddamn airport for over 3 hours. Isabella's mouth fell. Catherine followed him. A lesson? Her usually perfect hair disheveled. Who do you think you are to teach anyone anything? Into a thin line of pure hatred. This is completely unacceptable. Someone who finally stopped being your personal bank account and taxi service. Absolutely barbaric. I stepped aside and Isabella brought up the rear wider. Her designer coat wrinkled. Is over. Her makeup smeared. You can leave. You humiliated us. Cody jabbed a finger toward my chest, have any but didn't quite dare what you've done. You have parents had to take a $40 taxi because you decided to. I've been in this town longer than you've been breathing its air. My voice cut through their chorus of rage like a blade through silk. People who can make your life very difficult. Shocked by the steel in my tone, Mr. Jenkins. Excuse me. It's Cody's face went from red to purple. His voice dropped to a menacing whisper. You don't get to make demands here, You think abandoning elderly people not after what you is just something you can do without consequences? This is my house. You're about to learn exactly how wrong you are. Not moving from my position Catherine by the door, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Indeed, actions have consequences, Dennis, and yours will be quite public. Isabella grabbed her father's arm. Daddy, let's just go. This pathetic old man isn't worth our time. They filed out of my house like a defeated army, but Cody turned back at the threshold. You'll regret this, he said. I guarantee it. I closed the door behind them and turned the deadbolt with a satisfying click. Through the window, I watched them pile into their rental car, still arguing among themselves as they drove away into December darkness. The house felt cleaner with them gone, as if their presence had left a stain that was only now lifting. But their parting words echoed in the sudden quiet. Public consequences. Important people. Connections. I walked back to my living room and picked up my tea, still warm in its mug. For the first time in this whole mess, I felt something that might have been concern. But it was overwhelmed by something much stronger. Anticipation. 3 days later, I was enjoying my morning coffee and scanning the Spokane Review when I saw my own face staring back at me from page 3. The headline read, Spokane businessman abandons elderly couple at airport during holiday storm. My hands went still around the coffee mug. There I was in black and white, an old photo from my company's website, probably 5 years out of date. Below it, a story that made my blood run cold and my temper flare in equal measure. Cody and Catherine Jenkins, visiting their daughter for Christmas, were left stranded at Spokane International Airport for over 4 hours Sunday when family member Dennis Flores failed to appear for a prearranged pickup. The couple, both in their late 50s, waited in frigid temperatures as a winter storm warning was issued for the region. Winter storm warning. It had been 52 degrees and sunny. We couldn't believe someone would just abandon us like that, said Cody Jenkins, a retired banking executive. We called repeatedly, but Mr. Flores never answered his phone. We were forced to take an expensive taxi in dangerous weather conditions. At our age, this kind of treatment is not just inconsiderate, it's dangerous. The article continued with quotes about my pattern of erratic behavior and concerns about my mental state. Cody had painted himself and Catherine as helpless victims of a cruel old man who'd suddenly snapped without provocation. No mention of the Christmas dinner rejection. No context about Isabella's demands or their years of financial exploitation. Just me, the villain who abandoned poor elderly tourists during a blizzard that existed only in Cody's imagination. I set down my coffee and read the article again slowly, then a third time. The byline belonged to Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor. I didn't recognize the name, but I recognized the strategy. Cody had called in favors, used his banking connections to get this story placed exactly where it would do maximum damage to my reputation. Smart. Very smart. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt grudging respect for my opponents. They weren't just entitled trust fund babies throwing tantrums. They were strategic, calculating. They understood that in a small city like Spokane, reputation was everything. One well-placed newspaper article could destroy decades of hard work. They'd declared total war. I folded the newspaper carefully and set it aside, my mind already shifting into the methodical planning mode that had built my business from nothing. This wasn't about airport pickups anymore. This wasn't about Christmas dinner or mortgage payments. This was about winning. I pulled out my laptop and began typing names into search engines. Cody Jenkins, Catherine Jenkins, Isabella Flores. Their social media profiles, their connections, their habits, their weaknesses, everything they'd foolishly made public over the years. If they wanted to play chess, I'd show them what a real strategist looked like. I glanced at my wall calendar. December 18th. 7 days until Christmas. 7 days to plan something they'd never forget. I spent the next 3 days living in a different world, not the world where I was Dennis Flores, the broken-down old man who let his family walk all over him. This was the world where I was Dennis Flores, businessman, strategic thinker, someone who'd built something from nothing and wasn't about to let entitled parasites destroy what I'd worked 40 years to build. My laptop became command central. Social media profiles filled my browser tabs like playing cards in a high-stakes game. Cody Jenkins, retired First National Bank manager, member of the Spokane Country Club, treasurer of the Inland Northwest Business Leaders Association. A man who'd spent his career in positions of trust and influence. A man with a lot to lose. Catherine's Instagram painted a perfect picture of refined living. Charity luncheons, wine tastings, vacation photos from Coeur d'Alene tagged with #BlessedLife. Every post carefully curated to project success and sophistication. Comments from friends praising her elegant taste and inspiring lifestyle. All built on other people's money, including mine. Isabella's Facebook timeline told the real story. Posts about our beautiful home, with photos of the kitchen I'd paid for. Check-ins at expensive restaurants during months when I'd covered their utility bills. A status update from last week, so excited for Christmas dinner with family. Can't wait to show off our hosting skills. Our hosting skills. Our home. Our success. The narcissism was breathtaking. But it was Michael's LinkedIn profile that gave me the final piece I needed. His recent activity showed a new connection. Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor at the Spokane Review. The same Patricia Morrison who'd written the hatchet job about me. I leaned back in my desk chair, looking at the evidence spread across my screen. These people had made 3 critical mistakes. First, they'd underestimated me completely. Second, they'd gone public with their attack, which meant I could go public with my response. Third, they'd documented their entire privileged lifestyle online, creating a perfect catalog of hypocrisy. I clicked through to Patricia Morrison's profile, 43 years old, journalism degree from WSU, 15 years at local papers, no previous connection to banking or finance. Which meant Cody had reached out cold, probably through someone he knew from his business network. A 5-minute search through local business directories confirmed my suspicion. 3 mutual connections between Cody and Patricia's editor. The story hadn't just appeared. It had been planted carefully and deliberately. Amateur hour. I opened a new document and began typing. Not a response to their media attack. Something much better. A timeline. 5 years of financial support documented with bank statements, receipts, and canceled checks. The down payment for their house. $47,000 from my home equity loan. The kitchen renovation when Isabella decided granite countertops were essential. $18,000 for my credit card. 60 monthly mortgage payments of $2,800 each. $168,000 and counting. $250,000. More than I'd spent on myself in the last decade. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Probably Isabella trying a new angle. I ignored it and kept working. By evening, I had everything organized in a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. Bank statements, receipts, photos downloaded from their social media showing off purchases I'd funded, a printed copy of the newspaper article with my handwritten notes in the margins documenting each lie and distortion. I looked at my wall calendar. December 24th was circled in red, not because it was Christmas, but because it was the perfect day for justice. According to Isabella's Facebook events, they were hosting Christmas dinner for 12 people. Family, friends, neighbors, members of their social circle. The kind of people who read the Spokane Review and formed opinions based on what they saw there. The kind of people who deserved to know the truth. I closed my laptop and walked to my kitchen where I'd left my good camera, the one I'd bought years ago to document job sites for my business. Time to put it to work documenting something else entirely. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. Tomorrow, Cody Jenkins and his family were going to learn what happened when you declared war on someone who actually knew how to fight. Christmas Eve morning dawned gray and cold, the kind of Spokane winter day that made you grateful for warm houses and family gatherings. Too bad I wouldn't be welcome at either. But I had other plans. I laid out my evidence like a lawyer preparing for trial. Bank statements organized by year, each monthly payment highlighted in yellow. Receipts arranged chronologically showing the pattern of my support for their lifestyle. Photos printed from their social media. Isabella's new jewelry, their vacation photos, the expensive Christmas decorations currently adorning the house I'd helped them keep. All of it copied 12 times. One for each dinner guest. The newspaper article went on top of each stack, my red pen notes visible in the margins. Lie, written next to Cody's quotes about dangerous weather. False, beside the claim about my erratic behavior. Missing context, highlighted where they'd failed to mention 5 years of financial support. I dressed carefully in my best suit, the navy blue one I'd worn to Maria's funeral, pressed and ready for another kind of farewell. Today I was saying goodbye to the man who'd been a doormat for his family. Tonight, I'd be someone who commanded respect. At 6:30 p.m., I loaded my briefcase with the evidence packets and drove to Kendall Yards. Their house glowed with warm light, cars filling the driveway and lining the street. Through the front windows, I could see figures moving around the dining room. Isabella playing hostess in the home my money had helped them buy. I parked across the street and checked my watch. 6:45 p.m. Perfect timing. Late enough that everyone would be seated for dinner. Early enough that they'd still be on the main course. No easy escape for anyone. The front door was unlocked. Of course it was. Isabella loved to show off how safe their neighborhood was, how they didn't need to worry about security like people in rougher areas. I let myself in quietly, warm air hitting my face along with sounds of laughter and conversation from the dining room. But darling, that's not how we do things in our family, someone was saying, followed by more laughter. Our family. After everything they'd done to exclude me from it. I walked into the dining room carrying my briefcase. 12 faces turned toward me with expressions ranging from surprise to horror. Isabella froze with her wine glass halfway to her lips. Michael's face went pale. Cody and Catherine looked like they'd seen a ghost. "Good evening, everyone," I said calmly, setting my briefcase on their marble sideboard. "I hope you don't mind me joining your Christmas celebration." Isabella found her voice first. "Dennis, this is completely inappropriate. You need to leave immediately." "Actually," I said, opening my briefcase and pulling out the first stack of papers, "I think your guests deserve to know who really paid for this dinner, this house, and this lifestyle you've been showing off." A woman I didn't recognize, probably one of Catherine's charity friends, leaned forward with curiosity. "What is he talking about, Isabella?" "He's having some kind of episode," Isabella said quickly. "Michael, call someone." But I was already moving around the table, placing a packet of documents in front of each guest. "Here are the bank records," I said conversationally. 5 years of financial support, $168,000 in mortgage payments alone, plus the down payment, renovations, furniture, appliances. Everything you see around you. The room went silent except for the rustling of papers as 12 people began examining the evidence. I watched their faces change as they absorbed the numbers, the dates, The undeniable proof of my generosity and their deception. This is... One man started, then stopped, staring at a bank statement. Outrageous, finished the woman across from him. Isabella, why didn't you tell us any of this? Isabella's perfect composure was cracking. It's more complicated than it looks. Dennis volunteered to help us. We never asked. Actually, I interrupted, pulling out the newspaper article, let's talk about what you did ask for and what you told the media about me. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I placed copies of the newspaper article on the table, watching as the dinner guests recognized my photo from the unflattering story that had run 3 days earlier. Now, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the sudden silence, let's talk about the real manipulators in this family. Cody's face had gone from red to ashen. Catherine sat rigid in her chair, her wine glass forgotten in her hand. Mr. Jenkins here used his banking connections to plant this story, I continued, tapping the newspaper. Notice how I'm portrayed as unstable and dangerous, abandoning poor elderly people in freezing weather. A gray-haired man in an expensive sweater looked up from the article. Cody, what is this about? The weather was 52 degrees and sunny, I said before Cody could answer. And they weren't stranded tourists. They were Isabella's parents coming to the Christmas dinner I'd been banned from attending because I wasn't good enough for their company. Catherine finally found her voice. That's not, we never said. You never said what, Catherine? I pulled out my phone where I'd screenshot several of Isabella's social media posts. That I was too low-class for your parents? That my Mexican food and working-class conversation would embarrass you in front of your educated friends? The woman I'd identified as one of Catherine's charity friends shifted uncomfortably. Catherine, surely you didn't. He's twisting everything, Cody blustered, but his voice lacked conviction. This man has serious mental health issues. The stress of aging, financial problems. Financial problems? I almost laughed. Mr. Jenkins, I've been supporting your daughter and son-in-law to the tune of nearly $3,000 a month for 5 years. The only financial problems here are the ones you're about to have. I turned to address the entire table. These people have taken $200,000 from me while calling me names behind my back. They've manipulated my son against me, banned me from family gatherings, and when I finally stood up for myself, they tried to destroy my reputation in the newspaper. Michael spoke for the first time, his voice barely above a whisper. Dad, I didn't know about the newspaper. Your wife knew, I said quietly. And her parents orchestrated it. They turned me into a villain for refusing to be their personal ATM and chauffeur. The social dynamic in the room was shifting like tectonic plates. I could see it in the guests' faces, the gradual realization that everything they'd been told about tonight's generous hosts was built on lies. This is unconscionable, said an elderly woman in pearls, staring at the bank statements. Cody, how could you let your daughter take advantage of this man's generosity, then attack him publicly when he stopped enabling it? Cody's carefully maintained facade was crumbling. You don't understand the full situation. I understand perfectly, the woman interrupted. This man has been supporting your family financially while you treated him like hired help, and when he finally said no, you tried to ruin his reputation. Catherine's voice came out strangled. He abandoned us at the airport. After you told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner because my presence would be inappropriate for your parents, I said calmly. After 5 years of paying their bills while you looked down on me for my ethnicity and education level. The silence was deafening. 12 people staring at Cody and Catherine with expressions ranging from disgust to embarrassment for having associated with them. Isabella made one last desperate attempt to control the narrative. Everyone, please. This is a family matter that's gotten out of hand. No, I said firmly. This stopped being a family matter when you made it public. When you used the newspaper to attack my character, when you decided my reputation was acceptable collateral damage for your pride. I looked around the table at faces I didn't recognize, but who now knew exactly who I was. I wanted you all to know the truth before you read about Dennis Flores in the paper again, because you will read about me again, but next time it'll be the real story. I closed my briefcase and straightened my tie. Enjoy the rest of your dinner. It's the last one I'll be paying for. As I walked toward the door, I could hear the eruption beginning behind me. Voices raised in accusation, questions demanding answers, the sound of a carefully constructed social facade falling apart. It was the most beautiful Christmas music I'd ever heard. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, delivered by certified mail with the weight of legal consequences behind every word. I signed for it at my front door, noting how the spring air smelled of new growth and possibility instead of the winter desperation that had marked those dark December days. Notice of default, the envelope read. Final demand for payment. Inside, 3 months of missed mortgage payments had caught up with Michael and Isabella like a tsunami of reality. $8,400 in arrears. 14 days to bring the account current or face foreclosure proceedings on the house I'd helped them buy. I set the letter aside and returned to my coffee, reading it the way you'd read news about distant weather. Interesting, but not your problem anymore. My phone had been ringing for weeks with increasingly desperate calls. Isabella's number, blocked after the first hysterical voicemail. Cody and Catherine, whose social standing in Spokane had evaporated like morning mist after their Christmas dinner humiliation. Even Michael, whose calls I'd been ignoring out of a mixture of anger and curiosity about how long it would take him to swallow his pride. The answer, apparently, was 97 days. He knocked on my door that Thursday evening, no longer the confident man who'd excluded me from Christmas dinner, but someone who looked like he'd aged a decade in 3 months. Dark circles under his eyes, his expensive suit wrinkled, the smell of desperation clinging to him like cheap cologne. "Dad," he said when I opened the door. "We need to talk." I stepped aside to let him in, noting how he looked around my house like he was seeing it for the first time. The new furniture I'd bought with my first mortgage-free paycheck, the fresh paint on walls that hadn't been updated in 8 years because every spare dollar had gone to his lifestyle. The repairs I'd finally been able to afford now that I wasn't subsidizing someone else's American dream. "Nice place," he said quietly. "It's what happens when you spend money on yourself instead of people who don't appreciate it," I replied, settling into my new recliner. "Coffee." He shook his head, perching on the edge of my couch like he was afraid to get comfortable. "Dad, I need you to know how sorry I am about everything. Christmas dinner, the newspaper article, the way Isabella, the way we treated you." "Go on." "I didn't know about Cody planting that story. I swear I didn't. When I found out." He ran his hands through his hair. "Jesus, Dad. The things they said about you behind your back, the way they talked about our family, about Mom's memory." My jaw tightened at the mention of Maria, but I kept my voice level. "And what exactly did they say about your mother?" "That she knew her place better than you knew yours. That she understood boundaries. He couldn't meet my eyes. I should have defended you. I should have stood up to them years ago." "Yes," I said simply. "You should have." We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of 5 years of mistakes filling the space between us. Outside, I could hear my neighbor mowing his lawn, the normal sounds of a normal Thursday evening in a normal neighborhood where sons didn't exclude their fathers from Christmas dinner. "The house is in foreclosure," Michael said finally. "I know. We can't make the payments without," he stopped, seeming to realize how that sounded. "Without my help," I finished. "Without the money I was sending every month while you let your wife's family treat me like garbage." "I know how it looks, Dad." I leaned forward, making sure he was looking at me. "Do you know how much money I sent you over 5 years?" He nodded miserably. "Isabella calculated it after Christmas. The mortgage payments, the down payment, everything else. Over $200,000. $237,468, I corrected. "I know the exact amount because I finally did something I should have done years ago. I added it up." His face crumbled. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this." "You can't fix it, son. That money is gone. But more importantly, those years are gone. 5 years when I could have been building a relationship with you instead of funding your wife's fantasy life." "I know. I know that now." He looked up at me with something that might have been hope. "But maybe we could start over. Maybe there's a way to." "Are you asking me to resume the mortgage payments?" The hope died in his eyes. We're going to lose everything, Dad. The house, Isabella's respect for me, her parents' approval. I don't know what I'll do." "You'll figure it out," I said, not unkindly. "The same way I figured out how to live without a son who respected me. The same way I learned to spend Christmas alone while you celebrated with people who thought I was beneath them." He started to cry then, quietly, like a man who'd run out of other options. "I lost you, didn't I? I chose them over you, and now I've lost you forever." I watched him for a long moment, this man I'd raised and loved and sacrificed for, who'd let his wife's family convince him that his father wasn't good enough for their company. "Michael," I said finally, "you didn't lose me. You gave me away. There's a difference." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Is there any chance, any way you could forgive me?" "I forgave you months ago," I said, and meant it. "But forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. It doesn't mean pretending this didn't happen, or that I'm going to resume paying for a lifestyle that came with the condition that I be grateful for scraps of your attention." "Then what does it mean?" I stood up and walked to my mantel where Maria's photo sat next to a new picture, me with Rosa and her family at Easter dinner. The first holiday I'd spent with people who actually wanted me there. It means that if you want a relationship with me, you'll have to build it from scratch. It means showing me respect instead of demanding I earn it. It means making choices based on what's right, not what's convenient. I turned back to him. And it means that the next time someone, your wife, her parents, anyone, tries to exclude me from family gatherings, you'll remember who actually acts like family. He nodded slowly, understanding perhaps for the first time that respect wasn't something you could take for granted. "The house?" he asked quietly. "Isn't my problem anymore." I sat back down, feeling lighter than I had in years. "You're a grown man, Michael. Figure it out like grown men do. Get a job that pays enough to cover your bills. Sell the house and buy something you can afford. Stop living beyond your means and expecting other people to subsidize your choices." He stood up slowly, his shoulders straighter for the first time since he'd arrived. "You're right about all of it. I know." He walked to the door, then turned back. "Dad, for what it's worth, seeing you stand up for yourself at Christmas dinner. I was embarrassed and angry, but proud too." "Good," I said. "Maybe there's hope for you yet." After he left, I poured myself a glass of the good whiskey and stepped onto my back porch. Spring was coming to Spokane, the trees beginning to bud, the air warming with promise. In 4 months, I'd be 63. Maria had been gone for 8 years. I'd wasted 5 of those years being a doormat for people who didn't appreciate sacrifice. I wasn't planning to waste any more. My phone buzzed with a text from Rosa, "Dinner Sunday. The kids want to show you their school projects." I smiled and typed back, "Wouldn't miss it." Real family, it turned out, was something you found with people who actually wanted you there. Everything else was just expensive theater, and I was done buying tickets to shows where I wasn't welcome on stage. The whiskey tasted like freedom, and the future looked exactly as bright as I was willing to make it. 6 months later, I received a wedding invitation in the mail, not from Michael, but from one of the guests who'd been at that Christmas dinner. Patricia Morrison's daughter was getting married, and apparently my reputation for truth-telling had preceded me. The note inside was handwritten. "Mr. Flores, after what we witnessed last Christmas, my family would be honored to have you join our celebration. We believe in surrounding ourselves with people of character." I responded yes. Michael called me 2 weeks later. He and Isabella had divorced. She'd moved back in with her parents after the foreclosure. He was renting a small apartment downtown and working 2 jobs to rebuild his credit. "I wanted you to know," he said quietly, "that I told Isabella's lawyer the truth about the money you gave us. Every penny. She tried to claim it was a loan, that you owed us support. I set the record straight." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. "Dad, would you maybe want to have dinner sometime? Just us? I know I don't deserve." "Saturday," I interrupted. 6 o'clock. "But you're cooking. And Michael." "Yes. Bring your appetite and leave your pride at home. We've got a lot of ground to cover, and I'm not interested in any more performances." He laughed, the first genuine laughter I'd heard from him in years. "Yes, sir." After I hung up, I looked at Maria's photo on the mantel. "What do you think?" I asked her. "Think he's finally learned his lesson?" The afternoon light caught her face just right, and for a moment, I could swear she was smiling. Outside, my neighbor's children were playing in their yard, their laughter carrying on the warm spring air. Normal sounds of a normal life in a normal world where dignity mattered and respect wasn't negotiable. I'd fought a war and won more than just a battle. I'd won back myself. The man who'd been willing to sacrifice everything for family was gone. In his place stood someone who understood that real family didn't require you to sacrifice your dignity to earn their love. It was the best trade I'd ever made. And the most expensive lesson I'd ever taught was worth every penny. Not because of what it cost them, but because of what it gave back to me. My self-respect. That, as it turned out, was priceless.